BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Alasdair Lamont. Welcome to the Scottish Football Podcast, keeping you up to speed on all the stories that matter in the national game. It's Wednesday the 17th of April and Aberdeen finally have a new manager.
I think if you have patience, he's going to build something that they can cheer about, like in a year or two. He's going to need some time to build this. But if they have that, they should be really excited.
So is Jimmy Thelin, the man to galvanise the Dons. Turning our attention to matters on the pitch.
Sims! And that could be the historic goal that leads to Ross County's first ever win over Rangers. 3-1 County!
After Sunday's shock, can Rangers get their title tilt back on track as they face Dundee? And
smash! Back of the net, 1-1. And Hibs' season's just fallen apart in injury time.
Just how disappointing is it for Hibs to have missed out on the top six? Well, I'm joined today on the podcast by Kevin Thomson, former Hibs, Rangers and Dundee midfielder. How are you this morning, Kevin?
Yeah, all good, thanks, Al.
Good stuff. And also joining us is Gary Scott, co-host of the ABZ podcast. How about you, Gary? Pleased to have someone in the door at Pittodrie? Almost.
Yeah, absolutely not. Definitely makes a big difference now going forward. So yeah, good morning.
Good stuff. Well, lots to discuss with both Kevin and Gary. But first, let's run through the latest Scottish football news. Aberdeen have agreed a deal for Elfsborg head coach Jimmy Thelin to become their new manager this summer. The fixtures for the rest of the Premiership season have been announced as the league is set to enter its split. Celtic will face Rangers on the 11th of May in the third last round of games. Dens Park has passed a pitch inspection and at the time of recording will stage Dundee's game against Rangers tonight. With the Dark Blues to face a disciplinary hearing into the 5 games postponed because of their playing surface on Thursday, it's been reported they could be hit with a 6-figure bill. And in League One last night, Edinburgh City recorded just their third League One of the season and first in 19 games with a shock 1-0 victory over promotion-chasing Montrose. Well, let's start at Pittodrie. Gary just touched on it there, but let's go into a bit more detail. What do you make of the appointment of Jimmy Thelin?
I think it's an interesting one. It's obviously been well trialled now for quite some time in the media about Jimmy Thelin coming in. Certainly ticks a lot of boxes, I think, as far as a lot of Aberdeen fans are concerned, in the sense of, Thelin comes in, he's a guy who has a good level of experience in coaching despite only being 46 years old. He's a guy who's shown, progression at the clubs he's been at and steadily built those football clubs year on year. And he's a guy on an upward trajectory as well, which, again, is maybe not something necessarily Aberdeen have been particularly good at picking when it comes in the terms of coaches more recently. And I think for a lot of Aberdeen fans as well, when you looked at some of the names that were being linked with the job beforehand, I think there was a real desire from the Aberdeen supporter that we didn't pick up somebody off of the very typical Scottish managerial merry-go-round, and we've not done that as well. So I think for the vast majority of Aberdeen fans, it ticks a lot of boxes.
Okay, just before we go into further, let's hear from someone who's got to know Jimmy Thelin quite well. The football reporter at the Gothenburg Post, Joel Blessing.
They're getting a very ambitious manager who actually once upon a time started his own club to fulfill his ideas about football in a very low level. But he's been known for his ambition for like 10 years now here in Sweden. And he's very tactical oriented and likes analysis and numbers and all that. Kind of a theoretical kind of manager. He's not the guy who yells at his players to motivate them, He's more like an analyst and listens in and takes in all the perspectives and all that. When he came up in his former club, Jönköping, he played this really like tiki-taka, Barcelona-inspired football. And then he went to Elfsborg and that didn't work. So he totally changed style and became more like a Liverpool-inspired style of play with like fast transitions and quickly from the centre-backs up to the wings and all that. And a really like transition team that's been deadly in the penalty area with quick transitions. In the public eye, he's known for being a pretty boring guy. He's a club builder. He's not the kind of guy that you bring in March to, save you from relegation. He's not that kind of manager. Totally the opposite. I think if you have patience, he's going to build something that they can cheer about, like in a year or two. He's going to need some time to build this, I think. But if they have that, they should be really excited because he was a candidate for the Swedish national team this winter. So I think that's kind of a bargain for a club like Aberdeen to get that kind of manager.
This is the Scottish Football Podcast.
That's a kind of local take on him, Gary, but you mentioned just previously that fans, generally speaking, are pretty much behind this appointment, you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think when you look over the last few days, especially as the news is becoming more and more clear that this was what was going to happen, you can kind of see the reactions on places like social media, on fan forums, etc., that on the whole, this appears to have been pretty positively received, which, again, I don't think you can probably say, certainly for the last 3 managerial appointments anyway, or the full-time managerial appointments anyway. So that's at least definitely one thing that's the Jimmy Thelin appointment is bringing. It does appear as though it's uniting the fan base.
The one thing that has struck me is that, you know, he's been described as someone who builds clubs, and you said that yourself, and Aberdeen fans have been urged to be patient. I mean, so let's take next season. How patient do they have to be? I mean, what do they expect to see in the first year in charge? And do you see them being patient, giving them time?
I think this is the massive question now, Al, in the sense that I think everyone who has looked at Thelin and what he's done at Elfsborg in particular can look at that and say it's been steady progression from Elfsborg year on year. It's not been an instant overnight success. He's got a very particular and kind of quite unique way of wanting to play football. I don't think that the Aberdeen squad, as it's currently made up just now, is capable of trying to play that way. So that leads you to a conclusion there's going to have to be a relatively large overhaul in recruitment, in player recruitment over the summer. Can we do that all in one fell swoop? Probably not. And even if you do, that's difficult to make that work instantly. So I think there is a level of everybody's going to have to sit and be patient about Thelin trying to build something at Aberdeen. But then ultimately at a club like Aberdeen, there's always going to be that pressure to deliver something tangible on the field. And he's still going to have the 3rd or 4th highest playing budget in the league, and that comes with an expectation of being in a certain position in the league as well. I think as long as Aberdeen fans can see with Thelin that he's trying to do something and there are signs of that starting to come together, he'll get the time.
Kevin, what were your own thoughts on this appointment?
Just kind of echoing what you have said, Al, to be honest, like the time is precious, isn't it, for any manager or any coach? And I think only looking from afar without having great detail, the running of the club up at Aberdeen, but I thought the Neil Warnock debacle was a wee bit of shambles. I thought Barry Robson done a great job to start with. I know it filtered out, but I think it's just a brilliant football club, with great fans. It's rich in history, and they've probably been crying out for somebody to build the club back up, but we all know better than anyone really that you don't get time to build things up. So I think Gary really hits the nail on the head. He has to come in and try and make subtle changes, but there has to be an element of instant success, because I think it's just the nature of what the game is at the moment. And obviously I'd read a wee bit on the internet about him that he is a builder. He has progressed season on season on season. What is progression at Aberdeen? What is the expectation of the fans? They're the same as Hibs and Hearts, really. They want to be finishing 3rd. They want to be competing in Europe. They want to be competing against the Old Firm. I don't mean beating them, but they certainly want to be punching at the top end of the league and competing in the Cup. So it's a difficult job for him, but a brilliant one, because it's a great club with a great fan base. I think there's a good nucleus, a good squad there. But like Gary touches on, are they players going to suit the way he wants to play? Mm-hmm. Is the board going to put more money in the pocket to try and invest in the team? Because certainly if he wants to implement a style that Aberdeen fans, I think, will get on side with, I'm not so sure that the current squad is there for him to do that. So it'll be interesting to see how he manipulates the budget and manipulates the players to see what he can bring in over the summer.
Yeah, Gary, I mean, it sounds like you're envisaging quite an overhaul of the squad in the summer when Jimmy Thelin comes in. I mean, there was that kind of happened in the summer just past as well. There was quite a decent amount of investment. In fact, the last couple of years, the board have pretty much backed the manager in place at the time. There has been a lot of change to the squad. Do you think a lot of these players who have come in, or a lot of the ones who are there at the moment, will actually find they don't have a future at the club?
I think it's going to be difficult for a sizable proportion of the squad at the moment. Like, Barry built that squad on the basis of playing mainly a 3-5-2 with wing backs, and we had no width further up the park at all in the squad. Thelин's completely opposite. He wants to play with width high up the park. He wants to play with defenders who are comfortable to a certain extent of the ball being played over the top of them and running back in. They play with a kind of relatively mid-block when they're out of possession if they've failed to execute the initial press properly. None of our centre halves, as they currently sit right now, are comfortable with being on the turn at all. It's a place that they really, really struggle with. Midfield-wise, we look disorganised and frankly shambolic at times to time this season. Graham Shinnie will be another year older. Connor Barron likely won't be here. Bojan Miovski probably won't be here next season. So there's already signs just on a couple of instances there where you can see there's going to have to be changes made. The interesting part is going to be, and you touched on it, Al, the managers in the last couple of seasons have been well back financially in terms of building squads. Perhaps what Aberdeen fans would suggest is we perhaps penny pinched a little bit on the manager hot seat. So it's good to see that perhaps we've now adjusted that, but he's going to have to, Dave Cormack and the board are going to have to back that up now with, I think, player recruitment.
Kevin, just to finish up on this then, we're going to come on to Hibs a bit later, but it strikes me that there's quite a lot of similarities in the sense that there's been a lot of chopping and changing managerially at both clubs, and they've both underachieved a lot, certainly, this season. How important is it then that Jimmy Thelin is given time and they do actually stick with this process and get a bit of stability in a club like Aberdeen?
Yeah, I think they need that, Al, but the harsh reality is, I know what fans are like, that if Aberdeen, or Hibs or Hearts start off the season poorly, and you get to that dreaded time in November, December, and you're sitting in the bottom six, it'll be evident for everybody to see that the stick will come, the fans will start calling. But I do think when you're a big club, you do have to have a bit of consistency. And I think when I look at, I've got this wee funny notion when I look at like Hibs, Hearts and Aberdeen, and they've got brilliant academies, they've got great catchment areas, they should be producing good young players. Aberdeen have, to be fair to them, over the course. They've got Connor Barron obviously playing in the team every week, who we had at Kelty. They've had the boys that have been sold in the past. Hibs and Hearts should do better, in my opinion. You don't start the season to win the league, and the pressure of obviously being better than the other side of Glasgow. So I think they're unique clubs, but they're brilliant clubs, and I just think he's going to need time. I've got no doubt he'll get backed in the summer. The Miovski one is a unique one, I think, because they've got an asset that could fetch a lot of money that could then be reinvested into the squad. But at the same time, are they going to be brave enough to try and keep him, to then try and build a team around him? Because there's no doubt he's a very, very good player. You've got boys like Connor Barron, etc. as well. Are they going to go and break the bank and give him the type of money that he might go and seek elsewhere for 2 or 3 years, and then he becomes a good sellable asset? So listen, all ifs and buts, I suppose, Al, but it'll be interesting to see how it goes, because I think they're a brilliant football club. I think they're a big club. They've got a great fan base, and if they can be punching third or fourth and competing with Old Firm, which I think they're more than capable, it just makes it more spicy for everybody else, really.
And Gary, just before we let you go, in terms of the timing of when Jimmy Thelin comes in, do you think it's sensible to allow Peter leaving the rest of the season, or would you rather he comes in almost straight away, because they're still in a little bit of a precarious position at the tail end of this season, aren't they?
The timing piece is a little bit curious, especially now that Alasdair have been able to announce who their replacement for Thelin is going to be as well. I think it all hinges on how quickly Alasdair can get their promotion sorted out, and that just puts all the various different pieces in play. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the move for Thelin comes in earlier than June, than is what's being suggested. I think it would be good for him to come in, similar to how Derek McInnes came into Aberdeen. He had the whole of the post-split after he came in to replace Craig Brown, and I don't think that would be a bad thing to let Thelin get in the door, get his actual eyes on players, and understand who can do what within his setup. So I think that's the one thing that's perhaps just lacking a little bit at the moment, is the timing element to it. But I wouldn't be surprised if that changes.
Well, certainly interesting times ahead up at Pittodrie. Gary, many thanks for joining us, Gary Scott of the ABZ podcast, and no doubt be hearing from you again.
Thanks for having us. Cheers.
Okay, on to the much talked about game between Dundee and Rangers. As things stand, we expect it to go ahead at Dens Park this evening. Kevin, it's been a bit of a sideshow this. What have you made of the whole furore around the pitch?
Yeah, listen, it's been disappointing, isn't it? I've obviously played up there. It's a brilliant club. It's one that I really enjoyed my time up there, and I just think it's a bit of frustration in the respect that they should have a good pitch. The game should be on. It is a not so much a black mark on the league or whatever, or on our clubs as such, but I just think it's a shame that how it's transpired into what actually happened. Being called off numerous times, etc., and now it looks like it's going to be played. Obviously, on not so good a pitch, which is always a frustration. It was when I was a player. I like playing on nice pitches. I think the Premier League teams should pride themselves on having good pitches. But listen, it's going to go ahead, Al. It's a big game for both clubs. Dundee have done brilliant to get into the top six. It's a pressure one for Rangers after slipping up against Ross County. So, without getting too excited or too downbeat about the pitch, especially as a former player, I certainly don't want to put the boot into Dundee for sure. But let's hope the game can be played. And you're never out of the woods in Scotland, are you? The rain could still come, even though the forecast says that it's not. But brilliant for Dundee to get in the top six, and as I mentioned, on the disappointment for Rangers, they're going to need to bounce back on difficult conditions to make sure they get 3 points to stay in this title race.
Yeah, I mean, I was up at Dingwall on Sunday, and Rangers, even in the first half when they were ahead, I'm sure you saw it yourself, they're probably fortunate to be ahead. So absolutely crucial they get the 3 points and narrow that gap on Celtic, although it does feel like the momentum has swung Celtic's way just in the last week or two, hasn't it?
Yeah, listen, there's no doubt it's now in Celtic's hands, but I think being an advocate for never giving up, really, because it's in my nature. I think if they go and beat Dundee, which statistically they've got a good chance of doing, not that it's going to be an easy game, I know that all too well, but to be a point behind Al, do you know what I mean, going into the split is, I think if you'd asked any Rangers fan that potentially 3-4 months ago, I think just the fact that it ended up in Rangers' hands and the big disappointment, obviously not so good show in Old Firm, but managing to come back, obviously, and if you're coming for 2-0 down, showed good character to get back in the game. The manager was huge on that afterwards, the mentality of his players, etc., etc. But I do think the Ross County one was a sore one. It was a dagger to the heart for all the fans, because now the onus is on Rangers to not slip up again. And Celtic, if you're looking for afar, if you're not watching them too much, but in recent times it looks as though they're starting to hit a bit of form as well. So they'll have their hands on it, no doubt. But listen, I still think there's going to be lots of twists and turns, and quite an exciting, I suppose, for not being involved in it. That the Old Firm game does come around in three games' time. Well, 4 for Rangers, 3 for Celtic. The third one after the split, that it could be a winner takes all. So what an exciting climax that it could be. But I certainly don't think it's over, Al. But the harsh reality is, with Rangers having that disappointing result up at Ross County, brilliant result for Ross County. Obviously, I think Don Kevy's done a great job up there. Since they come in, he's changed the way they play.
Yeah.
He's brought a wee bit of excitement back. So all credit to them. But from Rangers' perspective, you can only get away for the disappointment that they'd worked so hard to get back in the title race, to get themselves in front. To have that game in hand to put themselves top of the league is a massive disappointment for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, we said we would touch on Hibs as well. Dundee make it into the top 6 meant that one of your other old clubs missed out. Just put that into perspective for us. I mean, that is just, as we were saying with Aberdeen, that is not going to go down well in Leith, is it?
Well, it was a hard one for me, obviously, because the boys wanted to go to Motherwell. And obviously, they normally go to Easter Road on a Saturday, so they had an opportunity to go, and they ended up not going. They ended up going swimming, so I think they were quite delighted. But it was a hard one because obviously you want to see Dundee do well, and obviously I want to see the Hibees do well. So it's always a difficult one when the scenario presented itself at the weekend. But brilliant for Dundee, and the harsh reality is that it's a real disappointment for Hibs. I've watched them a few times this year, and a lot of my mates go every week, so I think there's a hangover a wee bit. I think that's carried on for Lee Johnson, and I think there was some optimism, and I think Monty was given the time and the backing, and they obviously brought in some good players in January. But the Achilles heel's always been the kind of back four, and he's made big calls and leaving Louis Stevenson out and Paul Hanlon, and I think probably their experience and their help. I've got no doubt. Listen, I know them personally. I've got no doubt that they'll be at it every day. They're brilliant professionals. They're great lads. So, and I know they care about the club. So I'm sure their efforts never wavered for 1 second. But Nick's made that call, and you could argue, for the experience that Paul Hanlon, especially at centre back's got, and being captain of the football club as well. I think he's he's been one that might have just got them over the line with his experience. But Nick's made that call, and unfortunately, you have to suffer the consequences, really. So if they don't show up well in the bottom six and go and put the games to bed and be really competitive with the rest, then it'll be a difficult summer for everybody involved.
Just as we were saying with Aberdeen then, or my kind of point is, chopping and changing managers, just it doesn't work. So at some point you've got to stick with, if you think that a guy you've put in place is the man, then you've got to give him time. But equally, there's got to be signs that he is the man. So the question, I suppose, that's been posed now is Nick Montgomery the man, and should he be given another summer transfer window to kind of really properly build his squad?
Yeah, I think you hope he is. That's the natural thing. It's a club that's obviously close to my heart. I've been a supporter all my life. The kids play in the academy, so you always want to see anyone do well. And I don't know a lot of these managers personally, whether it's Lee Johnson or whether it's Nick Montgomery, or obviously I knew Sean quite well, so I was desperate to see Sean do well, and I just want to see Hibs do well, really. So whoever's at the helm will get the benefit off the back of that, I suppose. But you hit the nail on the head a wee bit. I think they've been well backed. I think they pay good money, Hibs, now. I think they've got a big budget. They've got a brilliant training facility. The stadium looks great. The pitch looks great. And the harsh reality is the team's probably underperformed. There's no getting away from that, whether that's individually, collectively, whether some of the big hitters have not hit the heights that they should be hitting. I think when you watch Hibs, you can see Nick Montgomery's got a style, which I like. He's got a certain way of playing. I thought at times when he was a bit rigid on playing the two in midfield, and they kind of got overrun a wee bit and maybe never had the players with... Listen, I love Joe Newell, but maybe playing as a two, he's not the most mobile, and maybe having people that complement him would be more beneficial. He filtered with Josh Campbell a lot, who is an enigma within the fans, but he's got bundles of energy, he's got loads of legs. He obviously suffered a serious injury, come back on the weekend. Yeah. So I see certain scenarios, and listen, I'm not saying that they two players or anyone else is catalyst for Hibs not doing well, but I just think he's probably had to, without chopping and changing too much, he's had subtle changes, and he's probably had bits that he would like to have changed and maybe not then had the personnel. And that's not making an excuse for him. I want to see him do well. I want to see him get Hibs playing good football. I want to see them competing at the top end of the league, and you want to see them having cup runs. He's mentioned cup runs in his interviews. I like to listen to the managers afterwards, post-match, pre-match, just to see how they are. And then I also like to see how it's perceived within the kind of fan base. And he's probably started to get that social media stick, which is a frustration, and you cannot change. It's just the way it is. It's the society that we live in. So listen, I'm saying hopefully, Al, because the harsh reality is if they don't compete and go and beat the teams in the bottom six and finish that 7th place with some good results and some feel-good factor, it'll be a difficult summer for everybody involved.
Yeah, I think the Hibs situation is almost a podcast in its own right, but I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there for today. Many thanks to Kevin Thomson, Gary Scott and Joe Blessing, and thank you for listening. Sports Sound will have live commentary of Dundee against Rangers from 7 o'clock on BBC Radio Scotland Extra, and Sports Team will have the highlights at 11:30 on the BBC Scotland channel. Remember, we publish new episodes every weekday morning, so you can get your daily dose of Scottish football bright and early. So if you haven't done so already, just follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss out. Bye for now.
Sacked in the Morning is back.
I got the ball and I put it on the spot, and as I got up, it was literally the best feeling I've ever had. And believe me, I spent a lot of money on feelings in my life.
Joining Craig Levine and myself, Amy Irons, will be some of football's top managers, best characters and most colourful players as we reveal what exactly goes on inside the dugouts and dressing rooms up and down the country.
We had a lad the other week and I saw him, he was playing the first half, he was playing the opposite wing. He had a set of gloves on and short sleeves. And I thought to myself, I can't wait till next half till he comes near me.
As the manager comes in, he smashes the door open, the jacket's off, shirt sleeves are up. We're thinking, here we go, we're all nudging each other like school kids and giggling.
Sacked in the Morning. Listen now on BBC Sounds.